Before the start of this match, the intensity of this battle had also been expected to be second only to the battle between the Saruman Snake and Golden Wheel battle teams. The degree of attention was naturally different. In addition to the recent turmoil, the sensitivity level was different too. Many teams who had been defeated had packed their bags and were ready to leave, but they were now notified to stay and wait for further notice. The team members were in the dark. They felt ashamed to stay, and they were too ashamed to watch the match live. They had been hiding in their rooms to watch the matches these past few days, especially the more powerful the teams. They were not allowed to leave. What could this mean? Did they really want to change to real combat after the quarterfinals? That was a completely different situation. It was a common scenario to be injured during battles involving the use of mecha. Life and death were junctions that they had to face. This was something beyond their control, and massive changes would take place in the hearts of both sides of the battle. Furthermore, could they withstand the attacks of the Earth rank warriors in the battlefield? Of course, these were not decisions that the ordinary team members could decide, they merely obeyed orders. This was because if the actual combat became a reality, then the vanity that they failed would mean nothing. The upcoming battles were to be fought with their lives at stake. To put it bluntly, the teams that had advanced would be dealing with tougher situations. In the first match, the Iron and Steel battle team put in their best effort. The first person to take on the match was their captain, Urgaz. The Sea Queen battle team sent their vanguard, Pabilsag. The Iron and Steel battle team is trying to fight a team battle with the Sea Queen battle team, said Zhang Shan. Tisk, I didn't expect the Sea Queen battle team to put in their best efforts. Wang Zheng smiled. Don't get too excited, you need to recover well. I am forged with iron. Saruman Snake were now united as one. They had attuned their state of mind and condition to peak level. It did not matter who their opponents were in the quarterfinals. The Atlanteans were the symbol of invincibility in the past. However, although the Atlanteans were still mighty, that mysterious aura has receded. While they possessed very powerful spiritual power, and could communicate with the forces of nature, it was not differentiated by elements, it was merely a powerful force that had not attained the level of invincibility. On the contrary, although the humans were slightly weaker, they possessed more variations and varieties. Pabilsag was very composed. He did not feel any pressure even though the opponent was the captain of the Iron and Steel battle team. Perhaps it was sufficient for the Atlanteans to do their best. There was no pressure to win or lose. Urgaz chose the Overlord. It seemed that the Iron and Steel Academy's preferences were similar. As long as the opponent was not Atlas, Urgaz would not need to do his best, and this would plenty of choices in the next two matches. Pabilsag was slightly slimmer in physique, and his face was somewhat pale, typical Atlantean features, very handsome. His aqua blue eyes were very beautiful, but confronted with Urgaz, horrifying energy, he appeared somewhat pitiful. His mech selection, not the Phantom King, not the Spectre King, Pabilsag chose a relatively unknown but very conventional Atlantean mech, the Rune Warrior. The humans called it the standard Atlantean mech. Pabilsag was quite a hoodlum. You put in your best efforts, and I would just make do for a while. Both sides were spot on in their choices of mech. They knew very well that they could not outfight each other, so they chose to preserve their physical strength. The deciding factor would be the team battle. Even if there were hidden masters in the Iron and Steel battle team, they would not be able to defeat Atlas. This, the Atlanteans were very confident of. There was a relaxed and light-hearted debate in the arena. There was nothing to look forward to in this match. However, everyone was very interested in the formation of the Battle of the Top Four. While the other countries were uncertain, it was very likely for Aslan to win. However, why the sudden fuss? Was there any hidden meaning behind it? Of course, this was speculation and gossip. Of course, for the audience, if they could watch an actual battle, especially this sort of level, it would be 1,000 times more interesting than watching virtual warfare. Although many people appeared like arrogant bullies during the virtual warfare, when it came to an actual battle, problems would begin to arise in their mentality and even their condition because of the crisis of life and death and the more instinctive reactions of their bodies. This situation was particularly serious in the military schools. It was commonly known as student disease. Some veterans who had been trained in the battlefield may have trained like dogs, but they had proved to be more useful in the actual battlefield. This was the mentality. This was a method to strip off the camouflage. Some people said that the top 8 were the best of the warriors. They would not be afraid of actual battle as no one would be afraid of death. It was obvious that people who uttered such words had never really experienced it before. This definitely existed. This was also the reason why the SIG had not been valued. The 2 mech warriors had entered the battlefield. The Overlord adapted very quickly, and his tactics were successful. Urgas did not want to waste too much time. This tactic was drafted by him. If it was in the past, according to the Iron and Steel College's reputation, no one could stop him from doing anything, but now he could not do that. He had too much of a burden. He had to consider not only the quarterfinals, but also greater goals. He needed to be prudent. The more cards he kept hidden, the farther he would advance. This was the lesson he had learned from Jondi Lilic's defeat. Never imagine that you were the strongest. Jondi Lilic was once the strongest in the SIG, together with Gonzalez, and the unlucky Chichin Nakai, and Wang Jung was truly the Earth-rank assassin. Although it had yet to be released, but his X-rank ranking would have leapt forward. However, he had to remain composed. The Rune Warrior pulled out the Rune Sword and moved toward the center of the battlefield. I feel that the Sea Queen battle team is going to lose soon. The Atlanteans have not been as powerful for the past few years. The Arbiter's tenacity specifically restrains such ignorant and arrogant people. The tactics were also targeted. I do not expect Arbiter to put in their best efforts. More than 60% of the audience was more optimistic about Arbiter's chances of winning. The members of the Sword Shield Rose battle team were silent, their eyes shining brightly. Lin Feng started to smile. He took a look at Atlas. Although Aslan and Atlantis had a very intimate relationship, to be honest, Atlantis had too many secrets and had always held a certain wariness against the human. Of course, this was understandable. He would do the same if he was in the same situation. The humans were a group of terrifying factions. It was another Zerg nation in the universe. The desire for expansion could be quietened temporarily, but it would eventually reignite again. Pabilsag was not the name of an ordinary person. It was the name of the person who could be the guardian of the temple in the future. Pabilsag was the successor of the new generation. He was the 5th guard of the temple. In the Atlanteans' myth, he was the guardian of death. In Atlantis, the names in the myths could not be used lightly. The 2 mecha met. The Overlord showed great momentum and surging courage. With a bang, it attacked the opponent. Boom! Overlord Sky Rocket Cannon. Egas attacked the runic mech immediately. Urgas could still control the direction of his mech in midair. The Atlantean mech was changing constantly, but it was very swift too. He sang the song of victory with the vigor of Arbiter. Confronted with the Sky Rocket Cannon, the Rune Warrior remained motionless. If he had chosen the Phantom King, he could have a variety of choices, to confuse the opponent, or to leave, but the Rune Warrior was just a basic runic mech. It was very balanced, but had yet to hear that it possessed any special functions. Even if you want to give up, you have to put up a fight. You can't be so negative. Pabilsag looked at the Overlord that was in the air. Beneath his calm eyes, great waves were forming. Humans' ambitions could not be calm, and must be deterred. The runes of the Rune Warrior were lit up, but the runes of this mech had no characteristic. Unlike the Phantom King, once activated, a variety of wonderful energy effects would appear. This mech was more considered as a rune training mech. It was also a regulatory standard for the Atlanteans. The rune sword made a circle in the air. In an instant, a red aperture appeared in the air, and in the next instant, the aperture lit up brilliantly, and countless rune symbols appeared. What the hell were these? The Overlord had begun its attack. Was this optical effect a joke? Urgas did not evade. The Overlord attacked with unstoppable force. There was no turning back. Rumbling. The expressions of everyone who was present solidified instantly. The Overlord crashed into the red rune aperture, but did not penetrate it. A series of vibrating roars rang, and the mech was bounced off. Urgas was furious. If it were not for the impact characteristics of the Overlord, that impact alone would have killed him. The composed rune warrior gently raised the rune sword and placed it in front of its chest, and swept. Pabilsag, the fifth guard of the temple. Pleased to meet you. Silence filled the arena. It was at this time that everyone realized that the Sea Queen battle team had dispatched the younger generation of warriors of the temple. Atlas and the rest of the team members were very composed. For the Atlanteans, glory meant nothing. They used to be infinitely close to the peak, and their evolutionary path was also almost perfect for intelligent beings. However, they were, after all, human beings, and they had paid a huge price in this process. If it were not for God's gift, they might have already been annihilated. Thus, each generation of Atlanteans took a clearer view of themselves. There was only one title out there, the Arbiter, highest glory. Boom! A wave of air exploded. Urga's spiritual power exploded completely, undoubtedly a mid-B Earth rank strength, and Pabilsag's spiritual power exploded instantly too, not weak at all, in fact, it was even stronger. This was only a member of the Sea Queen battle team. Of course, it was a characteristic of the Atlanteans to have powerful spiritual power, but their attacks were monotonous. This was an opportunity for Urgas. The Overlord started his attack. Consolidation of spiritual defense and application of physical attacks were the only tactics required to battle against the Atlanteans. This was an established tactic amongst the different countries. Simple yet practical. Urgas also adhered to this principle. He believed that his close combat strength could completely squash his opponents. When the rune warrior was cut by Pabilsag's rune sword, the mystical rune halo reappeared at the foot of the rune warrior, which complemented the rune warrior's aura. Tamira, warrior holy light. The rune sword followed up with another slit, and another aperture appeared. Soilas, quadruple thunder. Porista, Ares blessing. Himal, space isle. A series of runes radiated around the rune warrior. It was like fireworks, and very stunning. Urgas had no idea what the other party was doing. What the hell was this thing? Suddenly, a warning sign appeared. At the foot of the Overlord, what was this thing? An array of red runes. It appeared on the head too. There was also one in front of the Overlord, and another at the rear as well. The Overlord had already struck its spear. This sort of thing could not intimidate an Arbiter warrior. Boom! When the long spear stabbed the array of runes, a horrifying explosion occurred and the energy purged. The Overlord rocketed to the sky and the energy shield was fully opened. The array of red runes appeared at the rear of the Overlord in midair. The rune warrior walked out. The rune warrior, burning with red light, thrusted forward with its sword. Urgas bit his teeth, instantly controlled himself and turned the spear around and stabbed. Boom! The deadly sword was sealed tightly. The rune warrior's long sword slashed out, and the Overlord was suppressed from the air to the ground. Boom! The Overlord was slashed and fell to the ground by a single stroke. Urgas, Overlord, held on to the long spear tightly and blocked the deadly rune sword. At that moment, the rune warrior stretched out its left hand. Miroj Mons, imprisonment cage. The array of red rune reappeared. A great magnetic force hit. Urgas had the feeling that the Overlord was falling onto a huge magnet. Growl. A frantic power flowed from Urgas' body. He was an Arbiter who possessed the will to go beyond the limits. His ability X exploded. An Earth rank level 2 ability could not be ignored by anyone. But another array of runes reappeared again at this moment. Halavik. Spiritual interruption. In an instant, Urgas felt that his communication with the outside world had disappeared. This was the first time it had happened since attaining Earth rank. It was like a person who had drowned suddenly, even though he knew how to swim. Pabilsag gently placed his rune sword on the Overlord. Motionless. Time seemed to have frozen at this moment. This time, the 6 seemed destined to be a disastrous day for the Iron and Steel Sellage. The Asura battle team had suffered a whipping loss, and now it was Urgas' turn. The members of the Iron and Steel battle team were dumbfounded. Their captain, their greatest hope, had lost to a member of the Sea Queen. Without any resistance, Urgas refused to admit defeat. He was struggling. The Overlord squeaked, but it could not break the shackles of the array of runes. More crucially was that his ability X was sever, and he was left to the defensive. In fact, this sort of struggle should not have happened. Pabilsag put the sword there to let the opponent admit defeat, otherwise, he could have been stabbed dozens of times. For the Atlanteans, this was etiquette for a duel. But for the arbiters, this was a humiliation because they never admitted defeat. Growling, the Overlord struggled with all its might, and the rune sword pierced through. The Sequin battle team won the first match. Urgas remained in the cockpit, did not step out for a long time. This was a disastrous day for both the Iron and Steel battle team and the Iron and Steel College. The entire Iron and Steel College was dead silent. But the battle must continue, and the arbiters were not that vulnerable to be unable to continue fighting. Their will was still steadfast, although the morale was low, and was fearless. If it was an actual battle, they would be fighting to the death, to say the least. The arbiter team was the least fearful of death among all the SIG teams. However, this was virtual warfare and they were not staking their lives on the battle. In fact, this sort of elementary school students' desperate attempt was useless against the Sequin battle team. Without Atlas, the Sequin battle team won with ease with a score of 3-0, sweeping past the Iron and Steel battle team and advanced to the quarterfinals. People were shocked by the control of the energy of the Mayans, lamented the insolence of Saruman's snake, and admired the perfect integration of the sword shield rose. But when they saw the true uses of the runes of the Atlanteans, their brains could not comprehend what had happened and everything was blank. It felt like a child showing off his lollipop and finally understood his childishness. This was the true use of the Atlanteans, runes. The rigid use of the runes used by the Phantom King and the Spectre King was meant for elementary students. The Sea Queen won the 7th match. The arena was still filled with silence, no applause, no cheers. As always, the Atlanteans saluted politely, and the reaction from the outside world could not affect them. The more they behaved like this, the more the humans could feel their pettiness and vulgarity. Always comparing, always feeling arrogant, and now looking at this. How pitiful they were. Wang Zheng's eyes had always been golden. When Pabilsag started using the array of runes, his doubts were answered. The immense accomplishments that the Atlanteans had achieved in the spiritual power and the fact that they had created the runes could be felt from the amazing performance of the Phantom Kings, but he had always felt that something was missing. He finally understood this now. They had been hiding the true practice of the runes. This was probably the true essence of the Atlantis civilization, Earth's first civilization. Interesting. Unlike other people, who were terrorized, Wang Zheng's pupils radiated with excitement because he was equally interested in the runes. My day, the whole team couldn't be filled with all these psychopaths, right? Said Zhang Shan, with his mouth wide open. If this was true, the other teams should really pray hard to not encounter Sea Queen. This was definitely not just Zhang Shan's thoughts alone, but Zhang Shan's were more candid. Ai Xiaolu's expression was rather solemn. I've just received the news. The younger generation who has been granted the true rights to guard the temple, other than number 5, number 3 and number 6 were selected too, and this does not include Atlas. Zhang Shan wanted to swear. Could it be because Atlas is a rich playboy? If I were that handsome, rich playboy. Luo shook her head. The royal family of Atlantis is similar to the Mayans, and are equivalent to the powerful and most talented. In their own words, this is like a gift from God. Zhang Shan opened his mouth but spoke no more. This did not seem to be within his scope of consideration. The Atlanteans demonstrated a team annihilation situation. Their use of the runes declared the strength of Atlantis to the world. In recent times, all the countries of the Milky Way alliance were preparing to make their move. This was because of the rise of the empires, strengths, especially the advancement to their armaments, thus they were starting to misbehave a little. Military competitions among the various countries were actually disguised arms races. But Atlantis did not take part in those. They were only competing in the college type, and using this approach to highlight their country's strengths. However, following the advancement of the other countries, especially regarding the understanding of the use of the runic mecha, they no longer seemed to take Atlantis seriously. This SIG was an opportunity for the Atlanteans to use their strength to inform the humans to remain low profile. The generals in the VIP room were very quiet too. Obviously, this sudden change in situation had also caught most of them by surprise. Only Lin Hong was not feeling as shocked. He knew a little about it but did not expect that it would be to such an extent. This was the essence of the Atlanteans, technology. Her Highness Aina was the only person in Aslan who knew a little about this. But this thing was strange, and could not be imparted through words. Firstly, Aina could not disclose information because she was bound by her vows. Even then, even if she had wanted to, it was beyond words. According to the Atlanteans, saying, this spiritual transfer was a blessing from the gods. This was not what the generals were considering. In the Atlantean army, the mecha such as the Phantom King and the Spectre King were very rare, commonly known as high-end and special. The runic mecha were such conventional mecha. They would be fools if they still did understand by now. The rune warriors were the real military strength of the Atlanteans. All the warriors were able to control such power, the only difference was the level of strength. An armory with common runic mecha like the Phantom King was a low-end training machine. No wonder even the kids knew how to use them. Yet the humans were still complacent after all these years. Terrorizing. It was dependent on strength, not on the loud voices. As always, the Atlanteans sat quietly and appeared as if nothing had happened, and they did not even feel that victory was a big deal. They had merely just completed a mission. Atlas certainly understood how the humans felt. However, lately, there had been increasing disputes within the regions of the Milky Way Alliance. Instead of saying they were disputes, they were more like issues instigated by the more powerful countries. The Atlanteans were sending out warnings by taking part in this SIG. The Atlanteans were staying neutral, and do not desire war. Even if war broke out, they would warn the countries that harbored ill intentions for Atlantis to back off. If they were to invade, they would face the wrath of the Atlanteans. This was just runic technology for individual soldiers, but do not presume that Atlantis did not possess any heavy weapons. The thought that this was a conventional arsenal sent chills down the spines of the people of many countries. When the Aslan people came to their senses, they were not stingy with their applause. They were their loyal allies. But the applause seemed rather lonely. After all, the other countries were undeniably terrorized. Wang Zheng, do you know this stuff? Zhang Shan suddenly asked. Wang Zheng did not know whether to laugh or cry. Do you really think I'm God? Geez, no matter how mystical the power is, there's still the essence. If you can use the Phantom King, why can't you use this? Just do a little research. Man, what if we encounter this? Shut it. Don't jinx it, replied Ai Xiaolu immediately. Wang Zheng did not say anything. He was actually extremely interested. To him, it might really not be impossible, although he really had no idea about the principle behind the power. Although all principles were similar, it would be ideal if he had some concepts to begin with. Midday break. Everyone had just recovered from the shock. They were completely mesmerized by the strength of the Atlanteans. Even Saruman's snake had lost their dignity. The strength of Atlantis was obviously much more powerful than that of its opponents. The power that everyone had displayed was enough to make other teams worry. However, what spiritual realm had this Prince Atlas reached? Could his spiritual power have broken through Grade B? The Atlanteans had been perceived as possessing only spiritual power that lacked variations, and were weak in combat skills. Yet, looking at these shortcomings now, they were, in fact, their strengths. Moreover, the Atlanteans understood quite clearly now that the humans had no insight regarding the runic technology. Inequality. Even till the afternoon, everyone was still recovering from the shock. But the last qualifying match for a spot in the quarterfinals had started. Aslan's military affairs battle team was up against the Pioneer battle team. This was a team from the Heaven's Arrows Federation. The Heaven's Arrows Federation had always been an average team in the Milky Way Alliance. Their region was also rather remote. They had been growing steadily in recent years, and had kept a rather low profile in their international relations. However, among the Federation states, its developments were considered very good. At this SIG, they had also made a breakthrough to reach the quarterfinals. But they were now facing the powerful Aslan battle team. Tang Zheng, the captain of the Heaven's Arrows battle team, was an unknown, at least up until now. But this time, he could not be a total unknown. At least he was an Earth rank wood element warrior. In the first battle, the Heaven's Arrows battle team used the same trick as the Iron and Steel battle team. Tang Jung debuted, and he was definitely an Earth rank warrior. This was the sorrow of the small federation. If it had been a renowned country, he would have been an overnight celebrity. But in a small federation, he could only gain recognition in an international competition like this. Tang Zhen was very skillful in his physical technique and wood element ability X. Even then, it took quite some effort before he eventually took the victory. But this result was expected as it was, after all, a captain-level fighter. But the Heaven's Arrows battle team lost the next 2 rounds to the Military Affairs battle team. Zade did not even need to come on, thus revealing the definitive differences in strength. After all, it was Aslan's home ground. In addition, based on the Heaven's Arrows battle team's past results, it was considered a good result for them to have reached this stage. However, in the final team battle, an unexpected, jaw-dropping scene occurred. The seemingly hopeless Heaven's Arrows battle team was fearless, and were ready to fight it out till the end. There was no reason for the Military Affairs battle team to be in fear. But they were forced to a series of draws. The 5 mecha of the Heaven's Arrows battle team represented the metal, wood, water, fire, and earth powers of the 5 elements. They all chose warrior-type mecha. The most fearful thing about them was that they were obviously pretending to be weak during the individual battles. All the 5 of them possessed rather fearsome combat skills. Above it all, their spiritual coordination was extremely proficient. Less than 10 minutes into the battle, the Military Affairs battle team collapsed. No wonder their sniper and tank did not feel so exquisite. These 5 individuals were essentially warriors. This showcased the best combat and spiritual coordination since the start of the SIG. It seemed like a 1-to-1 battle, but in actual fact, the Military Affairs battle team was engaged in a 1-to-5 battle. This kind of spiritual teamwork was known as Resonance in Ability X research. In the past, there was a pair of twin brothers in Elite Academy X who could do this. But that was because they were related and their spiritual coordination was in sync. Unexpectedly, that the 5 members of the Heaven's Arrows battle team could do this too. The display of their combat skills was equally impressive, giving no indication that they were a weak team. The quarterfinals saw a big upset, with the elimination of the Military Affairs. At this point, the teams that advanced to the quarterfinals were born. Saruman Snake Battle Team, Sea Queen Battle Team, Sword Shield Rose Battle Team, Soulless Battle Team, 0 Degrees Battle Team, Dynasty Battle Team, Sky Arrow Battle Team, and Child of Light Battle Team. The representatives of the most powerful colleges in the current Milky Way Alliance were born. Every one of the weak links of these 8 teams had undergone a series of trials before they reached the quarterfinals. This was evident by watching the qualifiers and the past competitions. But the current organizing committee of the events did not seem to be very satisfied with this. They believed that this setup played to the strength of the teams. After the confirmation of the quarterfinals, the SIG organizing committee also issued the rules of the subsequent matches. Actual combat would be used in the quarterfinals, semifinals, and finals. Aslan would provide all the mecha for the competition. Do not feel bitter. Among the Milky Way Alliance, only Aslan had such a strong capability, so they could do it. In view of the strength of the teams that had advanced to the quarterfinals, the competition would be held in the military demonstration field of the Aslan military. This was a very large demonstration field that had no problem holding other massive heavy weapons, let alone the mecha. This was because the surroundings of the demonstration field were defended by the Super Zezis level energy shield, and according to threats, this protection could be intensified as well. On the one hand, it was the internal testing ground of the military, and at the same time, it undertook the special forces competitions both at home and abroad. The safety factor was the highest level of the Milky Way Alliance. But this was actual combat. Although the annual casualty rate of the special forces competitions had remained within the 5 percentage point, some casualties were still unavoidable. According to the current healing conditions, this number would be lower for SIG. It was not used by the SIG in the past because the SIG competitors' control was very mediocre, and they attacked without thinking. However, this year's SIG was different. The skill levels were unusually terrifying. Using juvenile methods could not demonstrate one's value. Although there had been numerous opinions these couple of days, when this statement was confirmed, it caused a huge sensation. The competitors in the top 8 were not bothered because for them to have come this far, they would obviously not be afraid to face any challenges. A star would surely be born, and likewise, a star would fall. Those who had been eliminated put down their luggage because their face was incomparable to the battle that was to come, and no one wanted to miss witnessing the moment that would make history. The upcoming battles would inevitably display the rays of stars and the fall of stars. The competitors would have to consider the damages. Thus, the quality of the bench was very important. Using the special forces tactics, the vacancy could not be filled. For instance, during the team battle, regardless of the number of members, they would have to partake in the team battle. If the whole team was defeated, they would be eliminated immediately. Of course, this was a more extreme situation, and it rarely happened in the special forces competition. However, this was the SIG. Furthermore, in recent times, many countries had requested to open this battle. Since they believed that the military school students should have the temperament of soldiers, why should they not allow it? While it would not be open to the outside world, it should be open to the military schools. The embassies of various countries had also requested it. In the end, the latter matches would be open to the major military schools in various countries, while imposing 18 prohibitions. This rule was necessary considering the cruelty of the battle. Once this news was announced, it caused an extraordinarily heated discussion among the military schools across the countries. The same heated discussion was taking place in a strong school like Elite Academy X as well. Looking at the configuration of the top 8, only Elite Academy X had 2 teams that had advanced to the quarterfinals. Other strong regions, like Aslan and Arbiter, only had 1 team that had advanced to the quarterfinals. Furthermore, there was an internal conflict in the Elite Academy, otherwise, the result may have been better. On an actual battlefield, this was a provision that most of the military schools did not have, and it was also where it would best reflect the true strength of the team. As a result of this, videos of the previous matches were spreading uncontrollably too. Of course, these were not what Aina was concerned about. In response to Kashan's aggressiveness, the only retaliation that she could provide was to encouragement attention and expand her sphere of influence. So long as her influence grew, the possibility of Kashan controlling the game would be greatly reduced. She had to consider the risks. Aina knew that compared to this, Kashan had to consider much more and more comprehensively than this. She wanted Kashan to be weary and not let up. She wanted to stop the actual combat, but she could not. After all, she was just a princess, and she could not provide a public challenge. Therefore, this Linsk taking advantage of the situation and nib the problem at its roots. Kashan did not deliberately stop Aina. Aina needed to demonstrate her abilities in order to mature. Furthermore, this response was worthy of 60 points. The reactions of all the countries were rather enthusiastic. The breakthrough of the Atlanteans and the Mayans had fueled the expectations of many countries. However, the military schools from the solar system were, surprisingly, the most popular. Whether it was Earth, the Moon or Mars, they were virtually in a state of madness. When they learned that they could see the battles of the top 4, they went berserk because the first team of 2 of the teams was from the solar system. To the solar system, this was like a seasonal rain after a long drought because the 2 teams from the solar system had been eliminated in the early stages. Although these 2 teams represented Elite Academy X, the captains were both from Earth, from the solar system. Both Wang Zheng and Lear could not have imagined how popular they had become now, not only among the military schools, but also among some comprehensive colleges. They were called the revival symbols of Earth's civilization. Needless to say, as the heir to the Kronos family, Lear had lived like an idol, and he had carried this status to the stage of the Milky Way Alliance. Wang Zheng was a representative of another dream. He was an unknown youth before he became the strongest king and led the Saruman snake battle team to invincibility. It was like living a dream. Of course, the Atlantis Sea Queen battle team was now the most popular among the major teams, reaching the top through super counterattacks. Good looks, mystical, powerful, and elegant, these were the characteristics of the Atlanteans. Furthermore, with the victory in the previous match, Atlantis' influence, which had faded somewhat over the years, had returned instantly. The humans had always respected the strong. Beside the Sea Queen battle team, who had emerged as the champion, the other two teams that were the most popular were the Saruman Snake battle team and the Sword Shield Rose battle team. The other 5 teams each had their own merits, especially since they had already reached this far and were thus worthy of respect. The quarterfinals would take place 2 weeks from now. This week would be the final preparation stage for the major teams. It would be an exaggeration to permit Aslan to provide actual training for all the SIG teams, but Aslan could do it for 8 teams. The list of the mecha required by the 8 teams would be allocated to the competition field. Everyone would adapt their time and training accordingly. At the same time, the mecha would be under surveillance. Why? It was obviously to prevent someone from playing tricks on the mecha. In actual combat, once there was a problem with the mech, even if it was only a loose screw, the consequences would not be merely failure, but death as well. Although it was unlikely that it would happen, Aslan did not want to be the subject of gossip. The group draw for the quarter-finals was drawn by the representatives of the 8 teams under the witness of numerous generals and organizing committees. The entire process would not be as exaggerated as other sporting events. The results would be announced under impartial circumstances. Grouping was most crucial, especially at this stage. The Sea Queen battle team had obviously been labeled as the least popular opponent to meet. To the contestants, they were more concerned about other stuff. Almost all the teams were researching the runic technology of the Atlanteans. Everyone had a certain degree of understanding of runes for some years now. Even Aslan and Elite Academy X had done research on the runes, but everyone had been taught a lesson by the Atlanteans. This had been a rather shocking situation. Frankly, the arbiters were not that weak, but listlessness was the likelier scenario. They had never faced such a method of combat before, so they had not recovered from the blow yet. It was plain bad luck for the Iron and Steel battle team. They had helped the other teams learn a valuable lesson. Wang Zheng and his team were also researching. He absolutely did not believe in being complacent, nor in the power of God. Any form of attack was dependent on rhythm and routine, and everything was traceable. The mysteries and fears had to be cast aside first. Truthfully, no matter how exaggerated the Atlanteans were, they were not going to affect him. In fact, Wang Zheng had grown up in an environment of fear, so he had built an immunity to fear. Overall, the runic tactics should be the routine of the spiritual control of the Atlanteans combined with the runic technology. It was a similar concept to the human's ability X spiritual communication, except that this should be a more complicated stage. This should be similar to the creation of a practice by the humans. This inner routine of breathing was the routine used by the Atlanteans. But there should be at least an 8th octave of breathing method to begin with, to be able to understand the rest. But basically no one knew about Atlantis, matrix formation, which meant that no one could find any insight. Under such circumstances, the most important thing was to hone the skills to deal with such changes. From the runes that had already appeared, there were defenses, attacks, and teleportation. No wonder the Atlanteans were not concerned about the teleportation box. They had the transmission runes matrix. However, Wang Zheng did not believe that all Atlanteans were capable of this. Even if they could, the speed, strength, and stability would not be the same. The Sea Queen battle team at this SIG was also one of the leaders of Atlantis. Every team, including Wang Zheng, had the same reaction after they had calmed their nerves. In truth, they had to give due recognition to the power of Atlantis, but it did not mean that there was no solution. Understanding aside, it was not a problem yet. This was because only Atlantis' next opponent needed to be concerned. Furthermore, each round after that would expose the limitations and characteristics of the opponent. With more observations, there was bound to be solutions. The remaining 7 teams were relatively calm. They hoped that they would not be the unfortunate sacrificial lamb. The committee did not waste any time. The night after the final 8 teams for the quarterfinals were finalized, they announced the list of the lineups for the semifinals. The list spread instantaneously throughout hundreds of nations in the Milky Way alliance. Top half. The Sword Shield Rose Battle Team versus the Child of Light Battle Team. The Dynasty Battle Team versus the 0 Degrees Battle Team. Bottom half. The Saruman Snake Battle Team versus the Soulless Battle Team. The Sea Queen Battle Team versus the Heaven's Arrow Battle Team. As soon as the list of the lineups was announced, there were loud exclamations from Earth, especially from Ares College, who was almost completely dumbfounded. This was, even the worst F-King BCH would not be this unlucky. The bottom half of the lineups were practically the group of death. The most repulsive thing was Saruman Snake's first battle was against the Soulless Battle Team. Not 0 Degrees, but soulless. This single difference in word was the difference between heaven and hell. Apart from the strength of the Soulless Battle Team, even if Saruman Snake were to win, how many of the members would remain standing afterward to get into the semifinals? Fine. Even if they were that lucky, and the whole team made it through to the semifinals, they would still be facing the winner of the battle between the Sea Queen Battle Team and the Heaven's Arrow Battle Team. No matter how huge a dark horse the Heaven's Arrow Battle Team was, it was useless. Ai Xiaolu was the one who had picked the draw, and this was undoubtedly a great honor. Everyone on the Saruman Snake team unanimously thought that she could be a representative. But after the draw, Ai Xiaolu herself was so dumbfounded that she wanted to chop off her hand. After this incident, Ai Xiaolu had never picked another draw in her lifetime. But this was another story. Nonetheless, this was the final result, and no one could do anything about it. Cheating was not a possibility, since it was drawn in the presence of so many people, including the generals of the different countries, and the ambassadors were present too. Furthermore, she had made the draw with her own hands. However, the Saruman Snake Battle Team was not discouraged. They had indeed climbed from the bottom to achieve what they had today. They were accustomed to the pressure. Furthermore, for a team that had worked so hard together and having gone through several phases of mistrust and trust, these young people had already built a very special bond. Everyone only had a fixed period of youthful days in their lifetime, no one could turn back time. Even if they had never spoken about it, a special trust had already rooted in their hearts. After this SIG, they would probably be parting ways and pursuing their own individual goals. Therefore, if a storm was coming, they would go against the wind and head into the storm. The situation for the top half was comparatively better. The Sword Shield Rose Battle Team had not particularly drawn a good lot either. They would be facing the mighty Child of Light Battle Team. The extreme energy was perhaps a real concern for Lin Feng. Comparatively more balanced, and truly lucky, were the Dynasty Battle Team and the 0 Degrees Battle Team. Looking at the result of the draw, these two teams probably celebrated somewhat. At least they had a good chance of making it to the semifinals. On the other hand, the strongest team, the Sea Queen Battle Team, was matched up against the weakest team, the Heaven's Arrow Battle Team. Even though the Heaven's Arrow Battle Team's performance was impressive when they eliminated the Military Affairs Battle Team, they had already demonstrated their killer move. The 5 elements resonance was indeed magical. But the principle was the same. When it was employed for the first time, the move was really unexpected. For the team that had come this far, if the same move was used again, a targeted approach would definitely be available. After all, the resonance of the 5 elements was not as mysterious as the runic matrix of Atlantis. All the countries had done their research. It was only a matter of whether they could do it or not. This period of rest and adjustments was enough for the 8 teams to be in peak condition. Despite the evaluations of the outside world, by being there, everyone held the hope of becoming the champion. The contempt of the others was the best incentive for themselves. Allow the opponents to surrender for victory. At the same time, the arena for the remaining battles had the capacity to host 10,000 spectators. A portion of this would be given to the various embassies and the representatives of the various colleges. The rest would be sold to the public. The purchasers of these tickets were limited to existing students. Among these, as the host nation, Aslan was given an extra 5,000 seats. After all, the distance was far, and it was on home ground. I felt as if Aslan wanted to witness the Sword Shield Rose Battle Team reach the top at home. In addition, judging from the overall situation, the Sword Shield Rose Battle team had a 70% chance of advancing to the finals. The tickets were sold out within minutes. It was amazing that there were a lot of rich students these days. Apart from Aslan and the nearby regions, the rest would have to take the Intergalactic Express. This was an astronomical figure. Of course, this was a perfect time for pretenses. By coming to watch once, you could pretend for one entire year. Although the road to this SIG has been rough, it was the first time in many years that such a large-scale military competition had taken place, and at the same time, it had been open to the public. The organizing committee underestimated the desire of the average person's desire to understand the secret. In just 2 days, the human's super invincible intelligence capability exploded instantly, gathering almost all of the top 8 players' background information. Even if they could not find anything, they could fabricate something. Thus, even Atlas and Locatelli had been given a legendary experience, half truth, half false. However, the experiences of the Atlanteans and Mayans may be more legendary than the fabrications. All the players had arrived at the arena. Aslan was very efficient and methodical. The ability to respond to unexpected situations could fully demonstrate the strength of a country, especially the soft power. Aslan did not take the mechanical path like Arbiter. However, discipline efficiency was achieved through quality training. Saruman Snake had also begun adaptability training. Everyone could choose a few mecha. The huge mech depository was astonishing. Similarly, Achilles had his own mech depository, but his selection was incomparable to that of Aslan. The styles and models were also the latest. This was the foundation of a country. Aslan had been too rich and affluent all these years. Kashan's tormenting strategy left a better effect for the SIG. From whetting the appetite with pre-selection viewing, to suddenly dampening the spirits by not allowing the viewing of the qualifiers, to suddenly having the opportunity to watch the quarterfinals. All the repressed emotions were suddenly released. She was praying that Aslan could win the championship. Otherwise, all of this was nothing more than contributing to someone else's good. However, given the current lineup, there was a great possibility this could happen. Anyone interested in the SIG had begun to find ways to travel to Aslan. Although not everyone qualified as a student, there were still invitations from the embassies, were there not? This was a political economic qualification. A celebration of the establishment of a new route was held in the distant Maklu. Although there was support from Hu, the route was not as plain sailing, with stubborn resistance from some smaller countries. However, when Musen and Mobo joined forces to support the Ko group, those who resisted collapsed quickly. The simple truth was that whoever was unwilling to do it would be excluded. The route could be detoured. With the main connection point determined, the rest were not as important. Furthermore, this was a mining route. Other than the increase in costs due to the longer time spent in traveling, it would not pose any other inconvenience. This increase in the cost of the route could still be sustainable. But this benefit was not something that the small federations could ignore. Of course, this was just a business skill. Soon, everyone signed the contract amicably, and the new mining route was finally completed. However, no one expected that Maklu would actually support the Ko group. This was indeed unexpected. As such, the Ko group won a great victory. As a result, Jasper, Gaber, and Laurel also made a big profit. Jasper had already been identified as the first heir to his family's business. With his authority, he could mobilize the strength of the Tatinger group. He had won the approval of the board of directors with his judgment and performance during this period. They also hope that Jasper can lead the group to a higher level. Although Gaber was not as fortunate as Jasper, with this performance, he had also won recognition, and qualified as the group's vice president. This was a sign of taking a big step forward. Laurel's family was even more powerful. This success was actually more like an icing on the cake, but Laurel herself was unclear, how had it come about? Tita Star aside, Governor Musen and Yan Xiaozu saw eye to eye. However, Yan Xiaozu and Mobo were clearly meeting for the first time, but the enthusiasm between the two was beyond imagination. These excessive personal feelings were obviously interfering with the usual commercial competition, resulting directly in the exit of the Margate group. It was simply tragic. With the general direction set, what remained was to invest and develop. Yi Zissou had already told everyone that Yan Xiaozu was also rather unwilling to stay. The SIG had reached a critical moment, and Yan Xiaozu and Yi Zissou had decided to go to the arena to cheer for Wang Zheng. Given their influence, it was not difficult for them to watch the match live. Ah, Brother Yan, are you leaving? Jasper looked distracted. Could it be? The boss's team has advanced to the quarterfinals of the SIG. Zissou and I are going to Aslan, said Yan Xiaozu. There was no point in hiding from Jasper now. Oh, I've been too busy all this while. Gaber and I will go too. We could also see the heroic bearing of the boss, said Jasper. Gaber nodded quickly. The two of them had already admired Wang Zheng from head to toe. Although Yan Xiaozu had not revealed anything, Jasper and Gaber could guess that Wang Zheng had likely shown his true strength. Sure enough, one strike was enough to annihilate his competitors. These two guys had no clear perception for the SIG, they simply wanted to show their support. Brother Yan, who is the boss's opponent? Defeat them and win the championship, said Jasper laughingly. He was in a really good mood. Laurel, who was beside him, coughed dryly. Saruman Snake's opponent is Arbiter's soulless battle team. Arbiter, are they very powerful? Asked Jasper distractedly. Although he did not know the team, he knew that the Arbiters were not to be trifled with. This is the strongest team in Arbiter. Aragorn is the champion in the younger generation of Arbiter. According to my intelligence, his strength is at least Earth rank level 3, which is the strength required to win the championship, said Laurel. It was clear that Laurel had done some homework. Saruman Snake was in a precarious situation. Jasper and Gaber looked at Yan Xiaozu. Yan Xiaozu smiled. Laurel is right. The situation is very bad. The boss's team is in the lower half. The first opponent in the semi-finals is the soulless battle team. If they advance to the semi-finals, their opponent will be Atlantis, Sea Queen battle team. The Atlantean royal family is personally leading the team this season. Apparently, before the competition, they had already demonstrated their strength as the number one team in the SIG. Jasper and Gaber looked at each other squarely in the face. Were they still going? It did not mean that they did not want to give their support, but if they went despite knowing that they would lose, would it not embarrass Wang Zheng? Laurel stared at Yan Xiaozu. Why was this fat person so calm and confident? According to rumors, Wang Zheng and Aslan had a very complicated relationship. But one thing was certain. They were being targeted now. The current matchup was going to completely annihilate the Saruman Snake battle team. Apparently, there was a belief that there was an ability among the people with ability X to interfere with the drawing, and they were able to do so without anyone's knowledge. Of course, these were just speculations. This SIG had attracted myriad attention due to its unprecedented scale and the stimulating, genuine battles. The Aslan people would never allow any slip-up. The finals had to be between the Sword Shield Rose battle team and the Sea Queen battle team. This SIG was a united effort between Aslan and Atlantis to trigger a shockwave that would hit the entire Milky Way Alliance, the strongest coalition of the Milky Way Alliance. Laurel's analysis of the situation left Jasper and Gaber even more speechless. Although they did not quite understand, they were not idiots either. Yan Xiaozu waved his hand and smiled slightly. Laurel, if you are interested, let's go together. Regardless of victory or defeat, you will have a different experience. Here he goes again. Laurel knew that this would be the expression. This expression again. Although Saruman Snake was affiliated to Elite Academy X, and even though it was a team dominated by people from the solar system, it was nonetheless very strong. However, if they wanted to win the championship, it was an absolutely a foolish dream. Be it political situation or combat strength, it was utterly impossible for them to advance to the finals. They were very fortunate to have advanced to the quarterfinals, but she knew that Yan Xiaozu would have confidence. If it was in the past, she would not have believed, but she was not sure about it this time. She felt that her worldview and values had been colliding since she encountered this person. In fact, she had already arranged for the trip to Aslan. This was because she did not believe it, so she had to see it with her own eyes. Location: unknown. Meng Tian was sitting quietly on the bed, silently calculating the time. This was a cell without a door. The ceiling emitted a constant white light, confusing the body's sense of time. It should be the seventh day. Meng Tian gazed towards the corner of the cell. She did not know what the situation of the other people was. When she was captured, she seemed to have heard that the entire army had been annihilated. The enemy's technology was more advanced than theirs, and they were ready for it. One thing that was certain was that the enemy were also humans. What to do? What to do? What to do? The woman who was mumbling in the corner was Xu Yi. 7 days of confinement, and her spirit was already on the verge of breakdown. They had not seen any other people since the first day. The daily meals were transported from a special pipeline, and no one took care of them. Meng Tian practiced her own breathing method in silence. She needed to keep calm and kept her hopes up. It was impossible for the Milky Way Alliance to not receive any news. In addition, since the enemy had not killed them, they should have other intentions. She would only stand a chance if she maintained her physical and mental states. Click. Rumbling. Suddenly, the sound of an engine turning on rang. The entire cell vibrated for a moment. She could feel the obvious movement of a moving car. This cell was actually moving at a very fast speed. Xu Yi, who was on the verge of a breakdown, suddenly jumped up and looked at Meng Tian. Was there really a special mechanism inside the cell? Giggling. Along with the sound of a stuck engine, the walls of the cell suddenly turned into countless pieces of debris, and like the ants retreating in all directions, it soon disappeared. This was not the only cell. More than 50 people were standing in a huge, open space, confused. Sunshine, wind, blue sky. What was going on? Time for exercise. The air still lingered with the scent of pollen. Captain. Great. You are fine too. A pleasantly surprised voice sounded. Meng Tian turned around and saw Menga and Pavel stride over. Obviously, like Xu Yi and herself, they had been locked up in the same cell for the last 2 days. As soon as she heard Menga's voice, Xu Yi's dazed eyes instantly restored its brilliance. Menga, Xu Yi, are you okay too? Yes, what about you? And Pavel, do you know where this is? Pavel, who had always been a man of few words, shook his head. However, it was obvious that he had kept his condition very well, and had not allowed these couple of days' confinement affect him negatively. At this moment, someone walked over. A stranger, not someone from the Deep Space Fleet. His clothes were different too, but it seemed to be some sort of school uniform. Fellows, do you know each other? The few people who came over were understandably defensive, and that was revealed in their eyes. You are. We sort of knew each other before. It seems that everyone is the same situation currently. We have a very important piece of information to confirm. Is it real or an illusion? A gigantic, white space. There were thousands of monitor screens under the lights. Hundreds of staff were examining the situations in each of the screens in an orderly manner. One of the screens showed the picture of the conversation between Meng Tian and the others. The top floor of the space was the general control room that was suspended. At the moment, the window that was originally transparent was covered with a black cover. Seated in the large conference room were 13 people wearing robes. 12 wearing black robes, and one in the middle was wearing a white robe. A middle-aged man was standing at the door as well, and his hands were hanging by his sides very respectfully. Big Elder, the last batch of the age-appropriate people have been released, including the age-appropriate people from the Milky Way Alliance fleet, said Raphael respectfully. He was the person in charge of this Oracle Star. Raphael, you have handled this very well, and have reduced the losses to a minimum. Thank you, Elder. But I'm a little worried. The agents from the Milky Way Alliance are also infiltrating through various means. Should we shut down the passage completely? I'm worried that leaving an opening, said Raphael. The elders' expressions could not be seen. The elder in the middle, with the white robe, appeared to have smiled. This was merely what Raphael felt. Project Oracle is the core of the sacred religion. Everything is dispensable for this plan. The plan can't be stopped. If it comes to the last resort, you need to show tenacious determination. I think you will handle it well. I understand, said Raphael reverently. The sacred religion possessed enormous power and reserves. But frankly, it was unwise to confront the Milky Way Alliance, which represented the laws of mankind. If a direct war broke out, the most likely outcome would be the intrusion into the dark forces. This was what the sacred religion was unwilling to see. Therefore, it was impossible to attack directly. However, the people of the Milky Way Alliance were trying their best to enter, and sooner or later, they would find a loophole. However, with the Big Elder's explanation, Raphael finally understood. Although the Oracle Star was of unparalleled value, even the sacred religion had also spent a lot of effort. Nonetheless, on the path to finding the Holy Sun and the Oracle, this sacrifice was insignificant. In order to reproduce the glory and allow the sacred religion to dominate the light and lead mankind to the right path, the Holy Sun and the Oracle must be found. With the Oracle and with the current power of the sacred religion, they would be unstoppable. This was the core. The opportunity had emerged, the seal had been unsealed, and the revival of the ancient martial arts forces was a sign. Through the power of the prophecy, the Holy Sun had basically been preordained. The only thing that remained was to search for the Oracle. The Holy Sun candidates would gradually be authenticated through experience, and the collision of the true and false Holy Suns was also a type of fate. Eventually, the Holy Sun would be reborn. Raphael left respectfully. The elders looked at the images on the screens. The Oracle was a kind of power, the profound argumentation of the universe, and they did not know its specific form. The sacred religion's revival had been many years in the making, and they had amassed a lot of influence. However, the constitution of the Milky Way Alliance had matured, and the existence of powerful countries such as Aslan and Arbiter represented order. Victory was impossible in a direct confrontation. However, if they possessed the Oracle, these people would be vulnerable. Thus, regardless of the sacrifice, they must proceed with their plans. The training of the Holy Sun could not be terminated either. As for other aspects, the concessions could be made. The sacred religion would have the means to interfere. As long as it was not direct confrontation, there were still plenty of corrupt practices within the constitution of the Milky Way Alliance. This incident may be a good thing. The way the sacred disciples have been searching for it has been too mellow. The Oracle was born in the experiences of blood and fire. This is an opportunity. Everyone was silent for a moment and nodded. In this case, I don't think it is necessary to stop the Milky Way Alliance from entering. These people may possess a gene of the Oracle. As a last resort, destroying the Oracle Star would be the only option. I will deal with the Milky Way Alliance. The dispatch of the fleet has been postponed. Agreed. Agreed. After the voting was over, the 13 elders stood up. When disaster struck, there was no fear and no sorrow. When a challenge approached, there was no timidity and no retreat. There would be redemption even in death because he would dispel everything, and the glory of God will give you eternity. After more than 10 seconds, the figures dissipated and the conference room returned to quiet. With the semi-finals drawing near, Aslan was bustling with excitement. The traffic department of Aslan was also on high alert in anticipation of these big matches. At the same time, they had to prevent any emergencies. So far, from the press releases regarding the preparations for the battle, it was enough to handle even more bustling venues. Of course, this was not merely for the live matches itself. The major military colleges would also be providing more venues for the live broadcasts. After all, those who could be at the arena to watch the live matches were still a minority. Aslan also needed such results recently, especially in the military colleges groups. Since they had made this such a big event, Aslan did not want a defeat that happened at IG, allowing the arbiters to win the trophy at their own backyard. All the students' enthusiasm was also very high. Every tactic was analyzed. The tactical department practically turned the 8 teams inside out. Of course, this was not of much use. The 8 teams had been hiding their strength, reserving their killer moves for the later games. Furthermore, a powerful team could make adjustments accordingly to their opponents. Lear was very busy. He was making a complete investigation of his opponents. Besides, he also knew that the captain of the Heaven's Arrow battle team, Tang Zheng, was probably doing the same thing. A Holy Sun candidate. He was from an ancient family, belonging to the core family of the sacred religion. This meant that there was an 80 to 90% chance that the Heaven's Arrow Federation was under the control of the sacred religion. This was sufficient proof of the terrifying power of the sacred religion. It was amazing that an organization could do this. At the same time, this made Lear want this power even more. But for now, he could not be distracted by his opponents, he needed to get into the semifinals first. Going up against Aslan was another matter, and so was winning or losing. But getting into the semifinals was the most important link in this competition. Once he was in the semifinals, he would be in an unbeatable position. Lear had also put in quite some effort on Lee Jungyong of the 0 Degrees Battle team. The 0 Degrees Battle team were all water element wielders. A single attribute could be very powerful, but at the same time, if it was targeted correctly, the result could be equally effective. Lear had no intentions of hiding anything. Weighing the circumstances, if they won this battle, the rest would be easy. Therefore, this was a battle that they needed to put all their effort into. The Sword Shield Rose Battle team's opponent was clearly not to be trifled with. The power that the Mayans had shown was equally problematic. So, no one said anything about home glory for the Sword Shield Rose Battle team. The Aslan people had to resolve the problem of restraining the mecha of the Mayans, otherwise, they would lose the first match of the semifinals, and this would be totally humiliating for Aslan. Simply said, to imply that the Sword Shield Rose Battle team's chance of winning was higher was illogical. Both opponents appeared to be cautious. The Mayans knew that this was their opportunity. They had been inhibited for a long time and they did not want to be inhibited again. The power of the entire team was also stronger than ever had before. Through this battle, they wanted to announce to the world that the Mayans would be returning to the major leagues. Needless to say, the battle between the Saruman Snake Battle team and the Soulless Battle team was similar to Mars crashing into Earth. Already on the verge of elimination, the Asura Battle team also survived. It was difficult for Martsu and Olivius to endure, but they had to. With most of the teams staying behind, if they were to leave or dared not step out of their doors, it would be a sign of weakness. So, no matter how unwilling they were, they had to deal with it. However, the Asura Battle team would not profess to give the Soulless Battle team any suggestions. Even if they had, Aragon would not have accepted them. Although everyone believed that it was a 50-50% chance, the Soulless Battle team had 100% confidence. Aragon was 100% confident in eliminating Saruman Snake. The Atlanteans were the same too. As long as there was an element of surprise, and with preparations, the Atlanteans were not invincible, especially in actual combat. The Arbiters were best in actual combat. The battle between the Sea Queen Battle team and the Pioneer Battle team was, in fact, the most relaxed battle. The strength and fame of the two teams had the most disparities. For the Pioneer Battle team, all they had to do was demonstrate their strengths. Tang Jung was rather unable to reconcile with the situation. He had already come this far, yet he had to face the Sea Queen Battle team. His chances of being selected as the Holy Sun were very high, and he had the support of one of the elders. After all, he was from the most orthodox branch of yesteryears. However, the Atlantis hurdle was really difficult to overcome. Although the 8 teams could hardly be deemed to have triumphed over adversities, they had indeed been busy honing their skills behind closed doors. Even the Aslan people would not be pretentious. In the midst of busy preparations, the first battle of the semifinals began. The opening big battle was between Aslan's Sword Shield Rose Battle and Child of Light. The Light of the Night Arena ushered in its first non-combat battle. The arena was sold out. Yan Xiaozu, Jasper, Gaber, Yi Zissou, Laurel, and Zhao Ellen were already there. Yi Zissou was the first one to arrive. But they did not look for Wang Zheng, because they knew that the situation now was rather unique and it would be best not to distract him. The contestants who had taken part in the SIG, regardless of whether they had won or lost, had their designated area to watch the competition, and they were the best seats. This was also the first time that the losers were gathered together. The Light of the Night Arena was rather well equipped. They had taken into consideration the audience in the back rows and the upper levels. There were huge holographic 5D images, equipped with specialized technical analysis and energy meters. The various equipment was still being adjusted. The entire arena was under the energy shield, including 30 meters underground and beyond. It would provide protection from the heavy weapons. The most important thing was, of course, the medical organizations. Treatment rooms were already set up within the arena, and the medical teams were made up of the best doctors and nurses from the capital hospital from Aslan. Those who lost their spirits to fight, or admitted defeat, would be considered to have been defeated. Any intentional causation of injuries or death were strictly prohibited. The final results would be judged by the jury. The conditions of actual combat and virtual warfare were two very different concepts. More emphasis was placed on defense and caution. Unlike the condition in virtual warfare, it was rare that the vital points were attacked, there was greater emphasis on caution. This best reflected actual combat, and, of course, the risks were also higher. Nonetheless, the risk was also equal. All the political dignitaries of the countries taking part in this SIG were on the premier's rostrum. Kashan and Aina were there too. Kashan officiated the opening. But Aina had the right to be seated here too. Although Weiyan was the second princess, she could not attend such official events. Aslan was very strict with this regulation. It was comparable to Kashan being the true ruler of Aslan, and Aina's father was more like the spiritual symbol. He would not interfere with the empire's actual affairs. This also had very strict regulations within Aslan. This was to prevent power struggles from occurring. The Aslan royal family and the main forces of the country had a set of validation methods. These regulations were the basis of Aslan's foundation. No one could and would dare to undermine it. Although there was competition in Aslan, but there were no ugly political struggles like those in the solar system. The noise in entire arena peaked while waiting for the competition to start. For most of the people, this was the first time that they were watching an actual battle of this level. Excitement was inevitable. Both the Aslan and Mayan warriors were in the waiting rooms, ready to stand before the audience. Looking at the time, Kashan stood up, walking forward while stepping on nothingness. This was not a strength, gravity ladder technology, Aslan's advanced technology was everywhere. The Prime Minister was all dressed today. Elegant, imposing, and gorgeous were inadequate to describe Kashan's existence. The most powerful woman in the Milky Way alliance had applied the technique of tactics to the extreme. It had long been demonstrated in the unique Aslan Empire and the one and only Iron Fist Prime Minister. We had an ardent past, worked hard to have a blessed present, and look forward to a bright future. What is the source of all this? Those lovely people, our guardians, the soldiers of the Milky Way alliance. The battles are for peace, and for the sake of freedom. You are the young pillars of our Milky Way alliance. I hope that you will inherit the excellent qualities of your predecessors. For the dignity of the soldiers, for the pride of the country, fight with your own style. Glory. Kashan opened her arms and instantly the 100,000 people in the arena echoed with earth-shattering cheers. On such an occasion, the atmosphere was ignited instantly. The same cheers spread to the military schools throughout Aslan. This was Aslan's glory. Now the host started to introduce the first teams for the opening battle of the top 4. Representing the Mayan Empire was the Child of Light battle team, with a holographic image of each team member being displayed. Every introduction was met with cheers from the audience. Although it was an away team, the Aslan people gave their opponents enough respect and enthusiasm. Not respecting their opponents was equivalent to not respecting themselves. The Aslans did very well in this regard. The national anthem of the Mayan Empire was playing in the arena. The image showed the Mayans standing, hands together and held in the air. This was a Mayan tradition. The unique Mayan singing and the Mayans' bodies appeared more crystal clear. However, most of the humans did not understand it. Next was the introduction of the members of the Aslan Empire's Sword Shield Rose battle team. When each of the holographic images popped up, it caused the entire audience to stand up and applaud. This was the home team, so the Aslan people's enthusiasm was undoubtedly high. They had come here to witness the Sword Shield Rose battle team achieve new heights. This was the hope of every student in the military schools. This was the era of Lin Feng. Looking at Lin Feng, Kashan's gaze also revealed a touch of warmth. He was an important part of her core team in building the future of the Aslan Empire. Composed, generous, and possessed extraordinary strength, and he was definitely the best choice to assist Aina. This SIG would be the stage for Lin Feng. She believed that Lin Feng could seize the opportunity, and at the same time, Kashan would not allow any surprises to occur. There were 50,000 Aslan cadets present at the arena. At the same time, all the major military schools in the cities of Aslan's major planets had holographic live broadcasts. What was the purpose? Human heart. The human heart seemed to be illusory, yet it was also a vital part. These people would be the main force of Aslan in the future. Both the nobles and the ordinary citizens would dominate Aslan. Letting them witness the birth and growth of future leaders would undoubtedly plant the seeds of faith in their hearts. Kashan glanced at Aina. These are your people. Do you feel that devotion? Aina could not refute. The support for Aslan's royal family was beyond imagination. It was the same for her as well. This was a kind of grace and responsibility, binding Aina as such that she could not move. I have dedicated the rest of my life to this country, and I hope that you will do the same in the future. Aunt, I am different from you, Aina whispered. Kashan smiled slightly. Of course you are. You are better and stronger than I am. I am just a founder. Kashan could make Aina speechless if she spoke about the cardinal principles of righteousness, but she was in no hurry. Circumstances create the man, and not the man create the circumstances. As for the so-called legendary era, she had not experienced it, but she could create an era that belonged to Aslan. Ambition. It was too vulgar. This was a pursuit, and the pursuit was inevitably when a certain state was attained. Zhang Shan, don't shake your legs. Lai Xin could not help but say. Why was this guy like a pendulum? Zhang Shan held on to his own leg. Hell, how can there be so many people? Lai Xin and the others could not help but laugh. Aren't you the one who loves to boast? This should satisfy you now. Zhang Shan was filled with a mixture of feelings, including excitement and tension. With such a spectacular arena and with so many people, these feelings were completely unattainable in the virtual world. You could even feel that the air was filled with a sense of boundless excitement, feel the breath of countless people, and countless souls and fanatics. Everyone could feel it, and this was uncontrollable. At most, it was to pretend or otherwise. Even the arbiters were the same. There was no such large-scale battle between the military schools, and the highest level was the IG, but the IG also had its limits. It was the first time this had happened in the eyes of the public. If it was just a small battlefield, every soldier would have a sense of control and the desire for the stage. However, the stage was too far-reaching. Zhang Shan looked at it, and thought, if he was in it, could he control it? The boundless cries shot to the skies. Would their brains be blank? Even the arbiters were the same. Only Aslan could be this extravagant. Perhaps some people might feel that they were invincible. It was because they had seen it, and they had their shares of experiences. There were infinite possibilities in the world. When Luo Fei saw that there were so many people, his mind stiffened up. This was King a far cry from what he was used to. How could there be so many people, densely packed like ants? However, Lear, who was beside him, was very excited. Lear enjoyed it. He did not move, but he seemed to have opened his arms in his thoughts, as the king of the world. No, this was too small. One day, he would stand on the apex of the Milky Way Alliance and accept the worship of countless citizens of all the planets. This was Lear's pursuit. Naked ambition, unlimited ambition. He could do anything to achieve this purpose. Wang Zheng's eyes were closed slightly. He was feeling the atmosphere under the same breath, but the feelings were completely different. Every cell seemed to exude battle will. Was this what the soldiers were pursuing? Purity. The Sword Shield Rose team. Lin Feng, Wu Yang Xuanyan, Srapenier, Qian Yunjuo, Eve Lit. Child of Light. Matlocatelli, Mert, Sha Dan, Baiji, Morichi. The members of both teams were very good-looking. The military uniforms of both Aslan and Maya were smart, very smart and good-looking. In the VIP seats, Yuan Donger and the others were howling with excitement. Both the Yang and Qian families were represented in the match, and, undoubtedly, this generation was also the people who were pursuing Lin Feng. In the future, to build the foundation of the military, the royalty and the nobility needed to control the army, and this was the core. This battle was to let the Aslan people know that they understood them and to pave the way for future entry into the army. As Di Maria listened to the captivating cheers, every type of envy, jealousy, and hatred filled him. He once had such an opportunity. Moreover, this was a huge opportunity to demonstrate his capability, but he and Aurora had not succeeded. Who knew how much manpower and resources would be required to make up for this setback? As long as it was for Aslan's honor, the people were extremely generous. At the same time, the families that they represented would also be acknowledged. Aslan's aristocrats were competing internally to show themselves as well. Families who were capable could control Aslan, while those who were not motivated or lagged behind during the competition would gradually be eliminated. It was the same for everyone. Di Maria's family was once the leader, but his and Aurora's mediocrity had also limited the family's growth. Di Maria did not want the sword shield rose to fail. This was Aslan's baseline. What he needed to do was to find ways to improve himself, catch up and surpass. As the selection began, Di Maria and others joined the cheering group too. All for the great Aslan. The first match was also a very crucial one. So far, where there were confrontations, the tactical strategy was focused on group battle. That meant that they just need to win one of the first 3 battles and preserve their strength and fight it out at the group battle. Judging from the situation in the arena, everyone could see the problem. Although it was huge enough for 10 mech warriors to display their skills, the problem was that there was no cover. This meant that as soon as they entered the battlefield, it would be close-range combat. This would be the harshest encounter in the battlefield. Furthermore, no energy tower or the likes would be available for recharging purposes. This would be completely real combat. There was also another problem. The battle between the Earth rank warriors could accidentally kill their teammates, and in such a competition, it was definitely not a laughing matter. Furthermore, it was vital that the snipers positioned themselves. The Mayans were very composed. For the team members who were fighting as a team, such battlefields were more suitable for their performance. The Maya's Mantis was not a traditional sniper. The problem lied with the Aslan people. Thus, the Mayans were actually very likely to fight it all out. Everyone was guessing what would be choices of the captains of both teams. The Sword Shield Rose battle team sent on Yang Xuanyan in the first match. His choice of mech was Aslan's highly recommended Holy Light series runic mech. Knight of the Holy Light. Representing the Child of Light was Murti, and he chose the Maya's Mantis, which had an energy conversion of 20%. In fact, the Mayans did not think that there was anything that could stop them. This time they used their killer move. Given their control of energy, even if the mech was in a dormant state, and at minimum consumption, it could still be detonated by the Ode of Death. A certain degree of damage to the mech would suffice. If there was complete restraint, needless to say, termination would be easy. The various teams and even countries had been studying this issue during this period of time, but in the end, they found that this problem was unsolvable. Fortunately, there was only a small proportion of Mayans who could convert more than 20% of the energy. In fact, it was the same as the human experts. Such people were small in quantities and posed little threat. However, in a battle competition, either opponent could be unlucky. As long as you wanted to win, you would have to either suppress your opponent, and not allow your opponent an opportunity to perform, or perish together. As soon as Yang Xuanyan entered the arena, the audience started to cheer. The Sword Shield Rose battle team seemed particularly relaxed for this match. It was uncertain if the Aslan people were pretending to be relaxed. Regardless of your identity, you would be regarded as a soldier once you were on the battlefield. No one would be merciful because of your identity, especially since the opponent was the Mayans. Come on, brother Yang. Qian Shuidi howled, as well. The young lady appeared particularly excited. Yang Ruoliu needed to be calmer. This was her own brother. However, Aslan's aristocrats were different. It was rare to have good-for-nothing rich children. On the contrary, the elites are often produced from the best education with superior resources. This was a vast difference from the pleasures of the other countries. Of course, in the Aslan people's aristocratic circle, extravagant things were still available. Although to have the honor, it was still necessary to look at the achievements in the military, political affairs, economics, and technology. In any case, one of the subjects was required, otherwise, they would be despised. As for the overstated things, it was a norm, given the wealth of Aslan. This was another state of abundance. The Knight of the Holy Light and the Maya's Mantis entered the battlefield. The Holy Light series was also the first runic mech mass-produced by the humans. It had proven its performance in the previous match. However, when confronted with the Maya's Mantis, could it dispel it? The battle began amidst countless cheers. From the appearance, the two mecha were very elegant and splendid. It was indeed not the type that everyone was used to seeing. In the CT system, everyone might have seen or even experienced it, but watching the real mech live was a completely different perception. The Maya's Mantis began to attack. An array of energy beams blasted towards the opponent. A swing of the left hand of the Knight of Holy Light, and the energy light shield appeared. This energy light shield covered most of the mech. At the same time, it did not affect its agility. This improvement solely was enough to cause the transformation of the mecha of various countries. The physical form of the energy shield would gradually withdraw from the historical stage. The full coverage type energy shield was bulky and energy consuming. Presented with this superior technology, its flaws were revealed clearly. Merte's energy attack was very swift. For the Mayans, the higher the physical transformation, the better they would be able to coordinate with the mech. At the same time, they could better control the subtleties of the energy. This was the unique aspect of the Mayan civilization, and it was also something that the others could not imitate. The light beams were getting more rapid. In an instant, the two beams penetrated through the energy shield, and actually drew an arc and attacked from behind. This was the weakness of the energy light shield. It was unable to provide 100% defense. This problem had certainly been raised by many people. But in general, the benefits of this energy shield outweighed the disadvantages. This was the weakness of the energy light shield. It was unable to provide 100% defense. This problem had certainly been raised by many people. But in general, the benefits of this energy shield outweighed the disadvantages. Yang Xuanyan and the others did not have to adapt to such actual combat at all. This was because they rarely used virtual warfare training. On the contrary, they often used the mecha for practices. Aslan's royal family and nobles were very clear about one thing: all the glories and status were accumulated by strength. Born into sorrow and die into peace. The decline of the solar system was a result of this. Drawing from past experiences, every adult male had to serve in the military service, and this included the Aslan royal family and the nobility. No excuse could be used to avoid military service, otherwise it would be equivalent to going against the entire system. No one could be spared. Growling, the energy beams blasted past continuously. The Knight of Holy Light rotated rapidly, avoiding the approaching energy beams. The Maya's Mantis was not good with melee. However, everyone knew that the Mayan Mantis had an invincible attack. If the distance was too far, it would not be as effective. If it was close enough, the attack could be released easily. Nonetheless, the Knight of the Holy Light did not seem to have a scruple. Mert was still using energy attacks. It was not that he did not want to use the Maya's Mantis, but unless it was a last resort, he did not want to kill his opponent. This was after all, Aslan's home ground, and Yang Xuanyan was also an Aslan nobile. Once the Ode of Death Ripples was applied, it could not be terminated. With his capability, even in a dormant state, he could still silence his opponent. Although it was actual combat, the Mayans were not ignorant of the ways of the world. Locatelli had already reminded him of this before the match. Victory was, of course, of foremost importance. The Mayans had no cause to fear the Aslan people. Mert could control the form of the energy. Yang Xuanyan's Knight of Holy Light could not get close as a result of this type of energy attacks. On the other hand, Merte's Maya's Mantis was thrusting forward. The human's energy technology could not threaten them. He just needed a close physical attack, but could he get close enough? On the battlefield, the Knight of Holy Light was performing all sorts of dazzling movements to evade the attacks. The performance of this mech was certainly an eye-opener for everyone, but it was useless. Any ordinary equivalent laser attacks were useless against the Mayans' crystals. This was similar for the Holy Light series. The Mayan technology was still dominating the humans. To most people, the Mayans and the Atlanteans both represented a more sophisticated civilization. After all, they had been around longer than the humans. Yang's temper is still the same. Qian Yunjuo shook his head helplessly. Let him play a little. Take it as a demonstration of the performance of our new mech, said Evelit faintly. Aslan and Arbiter had very different styles. Arbiter was strict and restricted any display of personality. But Aslan was different. Under the rules and the premise of pursuing victory, they paid attention to personality and encouraged individuality. Countless individualities formed a whole entity, and this was its truly greatest strength. This was also a path for the Aslan people. Yang Xuanyan, who had been evading, suddenly thrust forward and broke through the energy net. His speed was lightning fast. Yang Xuanyan was actually rather upset because the performance of the mech was too good, and he had no room to demonstrate his ability fully. Even though you need to be individualistic, you could not be too willful. There was not much difference in Merte's clear face. Suddenly, an energy light curtain separated the two mecha. Yang Xuanyan's Knight of Holy Light rushed forward without hesitation. The energy light curtain was like a very strong wall, and delayed the Knight of Holy Light. Merte's Maya's Mantis began to fight back. At such close range, it could hit the light beams vigorously with intensity. Not only did the Knight of Holy Light not retreat, the engine roared and accelerated forward. The runes on the body lit up immediately, and the stagnation effect disappeared instantly. The mech suddenly thrusted forward at the Maya's Mantis at full speed. The Aslans in the audience cheered. This was obviously the superior performance of the Aslan's mech. The Mayans could equip themselves with technology in other countries and pretend to be powerful, but it was useless in front of the Aslans. The misjudgment by the Maya's Mantis, and all the attacks fell through. The Knight of Holy Light instantly attacked, and the rune sword swept forward. This was a little too easy. Mert was expressionless, and the radiance from his body flashed, and the entire Maya's Mantis also resonated. Growling. The Maya's Mantis disappeared. The Knight of Holy Light appeared behind it in the next moment, and to the left side in the next second, the right side, the top. Growling, constantly switching between 7 or 8 positions. This was the streaming lights that the Mayans had used previously. It was completely derived from the super streamlined traits and materials of the crystals. Together with the energy resonance of the Mayans, this type of attack was formed. On the road to the Mayan technology evolution, practicality was the priority, and giving up what was not necessary. Having energy was equivalent to having power. The only thing that needed next was speed. Unfortunately, light possessed energy and speed. That was why they were the child of light.